Hello and welcome. Today we'll be looking at the exciting new matrix mixer line from SetonixSynth, the Shaka 8 and Shaka 4 expander. And what makes this so exciting is not only is it a stereo matrix mixer, but there's voltage control over each of the matrix points. Now, a quick rundown of how a matrix mixer works, or in this case, the stereo matrix mixer works, is you have 4 inputs. So you put a different sound source into each input. And if it's mono, it's okay. You just plug it into the left input and it normals to the right. So it gives you a full stereo mono signal instead of just a left or a right. So you fill that up with your sources. In each row is the volume knob for each of these inputs, and that is the volume knob that goes to the lower output. So if I turn this knob up, it'll go to this destination. If I turn it up here as well, it'll come out both. I could turn this second one up and it'll come out the middle output, and so on and so forth. And this is useful for a variety of applications, including but not limited to feedback patching, effect sends, using it as a router to different destinations, kind of like a patch bay with attenuators. And then the voltage control gives us VCA access to each of these inputs. You could do amplitude modulation, really interesting feedback modulation, all sorts of good stuff. And with that, let's start talking about the Shaka. The Shaka 8 is a 12 HP voltage controlled stereo matrix mixer where you have 4 rows and 2 columns. And then we have the Shaka 4 stereo matrix mixer expander, which gives you an extra column. And you could stack these on however much you want to make as big of a matrix mixer as you'd like. The Shaka 4 is 6 HP, so that with the Shaka 8 makes it 18 HP all the way across, which is not too bad when you have CV control over all of the volume knobs. Now, these are AC coupled inputs, so it will not work with CV, but it is a great audio mixer. So now I'm plugging in just a wavetable oscillator coming in, and it's going out this first output. I just want to show you real quick how the volume knobs work, as these VCAs are exponential, so you're not exactly at half volume at 50%. We're at it closer to here, and then it really starts to go up. And the CV input is the same way, so to counter that, you'll need to use a logarithmic envelope to make it into a linear response. And with that, let's get going with some demo patches with Shaka 8 and Shaka 4. Now, aside from treating this as a huge VCA matrix mixer, another exciting thing is these 4 VCAs allow us for quadrature. So I have a quadrature triangle wave coming out of tides. And if you're not familiar with quadrature, basically it is exactly what you're seeing here, where we have one phase of our waveform, and then it is just moved 25% of the way for the next one, the next one, the next one. So it gives us that full even distribution of sine waves, or in this case, triangle waves. And you can see how they're cascading downward. So I'm going to turn each of these halfway up. Maybe not quite halfway. And this is why tides is a really great modulation source for stuff like this, where you have 4 different elements working together. So I could shift this a little bit. And this is just turning the shift level knob with it in the red setting. Let's go back to the quadrature. But let's add some bumpiness into it. Maybe make it a ramp down. Make it a little more exponential. And this is only using one column, so you could totally do this along the other channels as well. Use it for your effect sends, is really great. And that is a Quadrature LFO with Shaka. All right, now let's look at some feedback patching. So I have my main signal here. I just have a root and a fifth going into mingles over here. And it's just panning between the two notes. And it's a wavetable oscillator, so I'm modulating the waveform of that as well. Now I'm going to take the left and right output from column C here, I'm going to call it, and pitch that into input 2. And let's turn the volume up on that output. Now if we turn row 2 up, we get that feedback in, but we need to feed it back on itself more. Let's actually turn this down so we only get the feedback. So this is only one step of feedback, one layer, but we turn this up. And we get some nice drive. And we can include the original back in for a little bit more. And we still have rows 2 and 3 to access along with our column B. And now what if we gave this a little bit more CV? For that, I'm going to give it 0 to 10 volts as showing with this LED cable here. So let's go down to 0. That was a negative a little bit. So I could go in negative and kill that feedback, or go to positive. And we're just getting some clicking. Let's turn that down a little more. And turn it up until we just get the clicking. That nice feedback oscillation. And get that nice 8-bit-y sound. Let's oscillate that. Let's make it more logarithmic. But also, what if we fed back that into the CV input here? So I'm going to turn this up to get this output out. And I'll start with this at medium, or I'll start with this down. So there's nothing going into or turning this knob. I'll turn it up. I'll turn the original off too, so we don't hear that at all. So now the oscillation of those pulses itself is kind of pushing itself more into that clipping territory. And we can control that with this output. Let's look at different banks of this oscillator. And that is feedback patching. Okay, now I'm using the Shakas as a mixer for different instruments. I have this sequence coming in on the first one. The second one, I just have some noise from the psychedelic voltage processor. The third input, I have a chord oscillator just ramping up in pitch. In the last one, I have rings. And for the outputs, output A, I'm going into marsupial and then out into my master mixer. Now for the B output, we're going into mimeophone with it fully wet to treat it as an effect send. And for output C, I'm going into Aurora over here, just fully wet for some reverb. But now aside from this as my dry input, and I'm gonna put rings in full for this dry input, and I'm gonna ignore these two on the main send because that just kind of noises it up. And I have CV in input 3 here to send this sequence to the reverb. I'm going to put that at about halfway, and I have an LFO going to that. Now I have an invert of that LFO going into the chords here. And it's also going into marsupial. And this is the psychedelic voltage processor's noise coming in. Actually, let's take this invert and put it here so they go back and forth going into the reverb. And let's plug into the chords coming in. And let's get some CV on rings. All right, now let's look at some sidechain ducking with the Shakas. So right now I have a wave-folded waveform coming in, but I want to use this more like a VCA. So I'm going to send an envelope in and turn this down, but not all the way because then we won't hear it as much because it's only a 5-volt envelope. So I'm turning it up a little. And now we want to sidechain duck this. So since I'm only using this as mono, it is duplicated into the right input, and this right output is the same as the left. So I'm going to plug that in to row 2. So if I turn this up, we're going to get feedback. Which can actually be pretty cool. Gets real nasty. But instead, I'm going to take column B here and go to an output. So now when I turn this up, I'm going to mute channel 1. So now we're only hearing this knob here. And now I could have that open and send it a negative envelope. And we get some nice ducking, but this is sidechained, so I'm unmuting this first channel. And we get that nice sidechain duck effect. Let's turn it off and turn it back up. So we get some oomph. We could also always add that feedback in. And if we don't want this original signal coming out, we could just remove that. And now we don't have it sidechain ducked, we have it just ducked. And we could still add that feedback. And that is sidechain ducking. And that's it for this video on the Shaka 8 and Shaka 4 expander from SetonixSynth. I hope you got some good tips that you could apply to not just this matrix mixer, but any matrix mixer in general. And with that, here's some music for and inspired by the Shaka 8. Step and go, my God.